but he ditched us. But it's okay, it's okay. We love these guys.
He's working. Yay!
So I guess we should probably start with the most basic of questions. I mean, I know for a fact that Jeffrey, you were recruited by Peter Jackson. He loved you so much from Reanimator.
That's not true.
It's not true.
That is not true.
But that's what the internet told me, Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, the internet,
It's fucked.
that's just mythic. That's not true.
Okay, well, how did you come about to this film then?
Well, my understanding was that Peter had been looking for this actor to play this role for a while. And earlier in the process, my agent at the time had pitched me to the casting director, and they said, he's too young. No. So he looked at everybody and came down to the 11th hour, and they finally went, oh, okay, well, bring him in then. And so really, kind of at the very end, like callbacks, I actually went in and, you know, it worked out. And I'd say that the reason that it worked out is because I had the material for a week. We never get the material for a week. We get the material for 24 hours, maybe.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. But it was very complex stuff and really well written, but denser than most stuff that you go up on. So I was really appreciative of that week to prepare, and fortunately, he liked what I did. So I do remember sitting in the waiting room, and someone came in the door, and the light kind of blocked them, and I couldn't tell who it was until they sat down next to me, and it was Joe Montana. And I went, I'm fucked. And I said, how you doing? Love your work. What are you here for? And he was here for the same role. And I went,
What?
They don't even know what the fuck they're doing, man. That's such a disparate.
Welcome to our lives.
And then Michael J. Fox was at these auditions.
Yeah, he came into mine.
And he walked over and he said, hey, Joey, thanks for coming in. I went, I'm doubly fucked.
I guess that's something that you know, some of us might be ignorant about. Like obviously, with the two of you established actors back then as well as now, and you think, okay, do people like that? Do they really have to go into auditions?
Wouldn't you think that? Wouldn't you really think? I mean, like, how many more mothers really do I have to audition? Seriously.
That's the thing though. With this one, you got to not only not be the mother, but you got to be a bad guy, which you never do, Dee. And it was kind of scary to see you like that. But one of the
my career seems to be taking that turn. You know, the Lords of Salem and the Frightmare. I have a wonderful time killing people.
There's the Shelley Winters. Anybody know the actress Shelley Winters? She won 2 Oscars, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so her agent calls her and says, you know, these people really like your work. They want you to come in and read. And she's going, I've won 2 Oscars. I'm not coming in and reading. I goes, okay, I'll tell them. Call back and they go, well, you know, they want you to read. And she goes, no. Calls her again. They want you to read. Okay, fine, I'll read. So she goes in to read, and they talk for a little while. She goes, so you want me to read? And I said, yeah. And she goes, okay, let me get the script. And she went into her bag.
This is true.
This is true. And she went into her bag and she pulled out an Oscar. She pulled out another one. Oh, here's the script. You know what? I still don't think they got it. You know what I mean?
Well, I kind of heard it a different way. It's like, well, tell me what you've done. That's seriously. I got that 2 months ago. Well, tell me what you've done. Well, you know, you're going into audition for 27-year-old people.
And you know, the answer to that one is, you know.
I said I've done 150 movies. What have you done?
Yeah. Or you say, you first. Yeah, and then there's the Rod Steiger story where, you know, he won an Oscar for In the Heat of the Night, playing a badass Southern sheriff. he went in and met with some young scrub-ass producer in his big office on the studio lot. The guy said, so, can you do a Southern accent?
And back to the Frighteners.
It's glamorous out there.
I think that everybody could listen to these stories all day, so we'll go intermittently. We'll talk about all this.
I had to audition.
You really had to audition.
For the Frighteners.
That's terrifying.
So did I.
Well, you know,
both
I
of you, I
mean,
can't
he's from
believe
New
it.
Zealand. He didn't know it.
I think we all did. In fact, I think Peter's philosophy is if an actor didn't come in and audition, then he wouldn't consider it.
I think that's kind of the standard everywhere right now.
Yep.
You know, if you want the part, you come in and do your thing. But seriously, again, how many mothers do play mothers that kill people, and mothers that save people, and mothers that love people, and mothers that hate people, and
Mad scientist with the knee.
mothers!
Well, that's actually one thing to address with New Zealand. Now, had either of you been to New Zealand before this film?
No.
It was a whole new world for
No.
you.
Fabulous world.
Gorgeous place.
Oh.
Really lovely people too.
Yeah, beautiful people.
Great.
Reminded me a lot of America in the 50s.
Yeah.
Everybody left their
Or the
doors.
60s. I remember that we went over to Peter at the time had his special effects computer lab in a Victorian house. So, yeah, let's go in this van. And we jumped in this van and tooled over there. And it occurred to me that Peter Jackson was barefoot.
Always.
He is a hobbit.
Serious. Shorts, a down jacket, and flip-flops or barefoot. That's that.
Walking
He
down the
said everything.
street, barefoot. And it was like, wow, man, this is the 60s written large.
I kind of want the two of you to host a radio show. You play really well off of each other. No response. Did the two of you actually know each other before the Frighteners?
No.
No, we just, I looked at his work and he looked at mine,
Yeah,
hopefully, and
it
he
was a
went,
mutual
wow.
appreciation. The other thing is interesting is that Dee kills me in the Frighteners. However, the way that it wound up is not the way that it was shot. Remember that?
No.
Take it away! You shoot me with a shotgun, right? And they had a whole rig that would throw me through.
Oh, right.
I had a whole back rig that would throw me through a door behind me, pull me back, and Peter didn't like the way that it turned out. He didn't like the look, and that's how he sort of came up with the bat plan of just kind of CGI my head exploding and having a ghost.
Well, it was so funny because we got down there and all of a sudden they were putting a harness on me to do flying. And they were having me handle this big ass gun, you guys. That thing weighed 50 pounds, I swear. With this flashlight on it. I said, really, in CSI and stuff, do they use these guns? Can't you find a fake gun or something that's not so heavy?
That a woman is carrying.
And I ended up doing a lot of stunts, falling, and I said to Peter, it's a good thing I'm in good shape and I'm a dancer because nobody ever asked me if I could move before you hired me. We did a lot of it.
We did a lot of
Yeah.
physical stuff.
You both had a lot of physical stuff in that film, and that makes me wonder, did either of you ever get injured? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming Dee didn't with your
I don't think I did get, you get bruises and knocked around stuff, but I don't think I really got.
No, we didn't get hurt. I mean, besides that, they were pretty safe conscious. It wasn't like a Wild West or anything.
Yeah.
They were really professional about it.
Beautiful. They have a whole different way of working down under. I mean, here it's just work, and you're lucky to get 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, It's so genteel and easy down there.
Yeah,
And for everybody, down to the best boy on the set. If they have a problem, they take it and the committee meets and everybody gets together and they talk through the problem. And if somebody's partner, because many people are married down in New
Yeah,
Zealand.
they call them
They call them their partner. If their partner gets pregnant, then they automatically have 2 weeks off and they automatically know they can come back to work. It's just so ever much more
civilized,
civilized
humane.
than how we
I mean, the one thing about Peter Jackson that I've always really respected is his team. That he works with Jamie Selkirk and Richard Taylor and that whole crew. Did you, I mean, I'm going to assume you had a great experience working with that whole crew just based on what you've already been saying.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
They're sweethearts. So Richard,
All of them.
Richard's a sweetheart, man, and it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal highlights of my career.
And you know, my husband died while I was shooting the Frighteners. I don't know how many of you know that, Christopher. And
Yeah.
first he had a heart attack, so I had to fly back. And he was fine. They did all his surgery. And he said he could go back there because they were holding filming. So I flew back, and 3 days later he got up and a blood clot hit his heart and he was gone. So I had to fly back again, do his service, pick up my baby, and take her back to New Zealand. So that's 4 flights pretty much around, halfway around the world in 2 weeks. And everybody on the set, everybody in production, Peter and everybody was just so giving and so wonderful and so supportive. And they said, Dee, you know, we'll take care of it. You settle up with us at the end of the movie. Well, you know, that would have been pretty much 3/4 of my salary. And so I went in at the end of the movie to settle up with them and tell this story. And the, what do you call the lady that pays you?
You know, the accountant.
Yeah, the accountant, that person, said, you know, no, Peter and
Fran.
Fran and Robert Zemeckis just want to do this for you, and it's their gift for you. You know, and you just really don't meet a lot of guys at the top like that.
No,
And it just,
I didn't know that. That's so amazing.
it was.
I remember that. It was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My little girl was almost 7, and so I brought her back, and you guys would play Foursquare with her all the time, and they even built a little harness for her so she could fly like Peter Pan. And the makeup girl would do, you know, everybody just took her under, you know, she became the mascot after all that. That's funny. Yin and yang, you know.
Would you say a lot of the off-camera time is what you ended up like coming to appreciate on that film? I mean, with the whole crew being so wonderful, and you know, Peter and all of that. Was that something that I don't know how to exactly where this like you would cherish here, because compared to other.
When you're honored and cared for like that, not only in your work but in your personal life. I mean, you know, we all just want to be respected, right? And loved and honored. And so often, I think, in this business is the attitude that we're paying you, so we own you. And that's what they think respect and honor for another person is. You know? And it just wasn't down there. It was just for everybody. It wasn't just for me or Jeffrey. It was literally everybody, right? Everybody, down to the smallest guy on the set, was respected like that. It was beautiful. It was a really beautiful experience.
Now, the two of you don't have a lot of on-screen time together, but
Like, no.
2 seconds when she kills you, but that's about it.
But I don't think we were on screen together. They would cut from me to her. We never. had a scene like a two-shot ever.
Well, they had to get really creative when I went back
Right.
to handle all that. And Peter said we never thought you'd be back, Dee. So they had figured out a way to cut all around my stuff and use people and just shoot their back. I don't know, but they never really expected me to come out.
What I'd really like to do is take some time to single both of you out to talk about your characters a bit. And I mean, obviously, we'll start with the really evil one, Milton Dammers here. Your character, one of the most fascinating characters I've ever seen. I mean, obviously, we had all seen you for years as Dr. Herbert West, and we knew you were very a man possessed, so to speak. But Milton Dammers is a whole other suitcase of wax. And yeah, I mean, if you know, was there anybody who you researched in preparation for this, or you just really looked at the script and went for it?
Well, you know, I talked with Peter, and he had a few very, very strong ideas. But I have to say that Peter has been and is the most trusting and collaborative director that I have ever worked with, because he had no ego in terms of what he wanted from me, or he was not possessive of what he had written. And so once he chose you, he trusted you. And I remember, you know, the backstory for Dammers was basically that he was the most loyal FBI agent imaginable, and would, for God and country, go undercover into every cult imaginable, and had really paid a physical and psychic price for that. So Peter one of the things that he really wanted was that I wear black contact lenses so that my eyes were just two wide open pupils of madness, as if I had dropped 20 tabs of acid.
Damn, I thought you really cut
and never came back. And so from there, I started thinking about this whole loyalty to country and sacrificing yourself. And when you get that patriotic, you actually, I think, go over into nationalism. And then, to me, the penultimate nationalist is Hitler. So I went to the Wellington Library, and I found a picture book of young Hitler. And I brought it to Peter. I did. I brought it to Peter, and I said, Peter, what do you think if I cut my hair like that? And I'll never forget, he was at the craft table. And he looked down, and he looked at me, and he went, yeah, that'll be good. And I went, oh, wow, okay. And then I thought of the idea of sticking something behind my ears to really accentuate frightening and ridiculous at the same time. It was really one of the best experiences I've ever had. But on the inside, I don't know, that's a whole instinct kind of approach for me. I can't really articulate my process. I just go for it. So,
I mean, personally, when I watch the first scene that you're in, I almost think of you as a kitten. Like when you're around the corner and you're yelling things in, but you just can't face Trini Alvarado at that moment.
and that came out of shooting. I did that once, because he's furtive. He's really paranoid of women that freak him out, and so I did that. I did a peek, and Peter said, "Wait, do that a lot." So, we were really kind of finding this strange sort of OCD, ADD, autistic odd guy, and fortunately, I think it worked out.
We're also very, obviously because of your fear of women and just this a very smart man, You know what's going on.
And paranoid.
Yes, very awkward man. Very awkward man.
Yeah, and nothing is, he's not comfortable in his own skin. But he does love his power. And he sees things where there's nothing to see. I mean, he truly believes that Michael J. Fox is, a demon. And this is wearing a lead breastplate. This is, the man had issues.
Which brings me to ask, was that something that was actually like physically heavy, or was that very light and it just looked very...
It just looked very heavy. It was actually very light.
They gave me the gun.
They gave her the weight. For me, it was really comfortable. The other thing that was amazing too, which this never happened, ever in an American film. You know, I pull my shirt open and I am a scarred mess. And they came to me with drawings and they said, "This is what we're thinking. What do you think?" I mean, we want your input. And I took what they had and I went home and I looked at it, and I mean, they did some phenomenal things, but I did have a few ideas like, can we put also a unfinished game of tic-tac-toe? Can we do that? And they thought that was a great idea. People just did shit to him, So the collaboration was not just with Peter, it was with the design elements as well. And I'm sorry, I've done a lot of movies. The design guys never come to me and go, "This is what we're thinking. What do you think?" So it was a very unique and special experience for that. Very creative and trusting and inclusive.
I had the same experience with the wardrobe, because when Fran and Peter and the wardrobe were all there, and we were talking about Patricia going back into, reliving when Jay comes back in to take her over, and how she was going to age. And I went, "Oh no, I think she should get younger." And Fran looked at me, and Peter looked at Fran, and I said, "Yes, because she comes alive when she goes back to killing and everything. It excites her, and her old woman falls away." And so that's what we went for. And that's what I mean when that's what we're saying, when all the collaborative efforts come together, film can be so exciting. And unfortunately, a lot of the time now, it's kind of becoming Hitler-esque, where I wrote these words and they're sacred and don't you dare invert any of them, or find ways to make them your own. And
or we don't trust the actors to have any opinion on design or thought or structure or what you wear. I mean, it's very untrusting here a lot of the
Well,
time.
I think sometimes, it
Not always.
depends on the director you're working with. I mean, Stephen was certainly, he was very open to suggestions too. I think the most open director I ever had was Blake Edwards. Oh my God, what an amazing man and director.
Out of curiosity for both of you, as actors, and in this film, the two things that I point to with Milton, moments when the camera is directly in your face, the moment when you break open your shirt and you've got the steel plate on. With Patricia and Bradley, I think about the vulnerable moments when you're crying. Are there any moment where you just sort of have inhibition and you realize, like, I have to do this in front of 20 people and I feel a little awkward about that? Or as an actor, can you not have those moments?
Well, you can have them, but you can't hold on to them.
No. I don't ever feel weird in to be her, whoever her is at the moment that I'm playing.
And that's because you're a great actress.
I want to be her. I mean, the first time I saw the Frighteners and I saw this part of it, I might as well go home.
Well,
You walked away with the film.
you know, there were moments like when I
It
had.
was beyond what anybody could imagine.
I just don't even. Sometimes you just go, just do it. Don't think, just do it. The scene where I'm out, I get out of the car and I expose my scars in the headlights of a police car to a woman that I'm strangely attracted to, and this is like my way to woo her. Problems. And then I had to kind of go into a trance-like, speaking in tongues kind of dissertation. That was not written, but it was something that I had to do. That was really challenging to me, to just kind of,
Wow, I didn't know.
I don't even know what I'm going to do. I don't even know. It's just going to be gibberish. But in my head, I had a whole thing, but I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth.
Oftentimes that's when the best stuff happens. It's when you sort of kind of know what you're going to do, and then the adrenaline of the moment just takes you over into this bizarre freaking place, and you come out of it, you hear cut, and you went, where was I?
I think,
I'm back.
I think that there's a parallel to sports in that when an athlete sees everything in a split second and can gracefully maneuver and catch a spectacular ball, and they could not possibly tell you how they did that.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
One with the moment.
One with the moment.
In that vein, I'm curious if either of you are method actors in the sense of when they yell cut, are you just back to being you, or do you have to stay in the character a bit before you can ease out of it? You can tell I know nothing about acting right now. I'm just trying to sound like I do.
That's not true. Everybody's got one or part of what you just said. You find ways to make it all your own. I mean, my technique is not to work on anything at all. I'm serious, and it's a really trained technique, but it's pretty much learning the lines and walking on set and channeling the character. I mean, when I was working with Chris in The Howling, Joe Dante would say, well, show it. I know you guys rehearse, and Chris would go, I'm sorry, my leading lady doesn't rehearse. But he would break everything down. And then somehow we could come together. It would all work in the moment. And I think those are the two extremes of acting, and then everybody finds what part of those extremes are in the middle they put together for themselves to bring their performance alive. Stuff like my laugh when the kid says penis breath in E.T. If I had planned that out, I would not have laughed. But in the moment, it was just so ridiculous, that it was a much more real moment than what you think a real moment would be.
Right.
If you figure it out too much.
I'm a little wary about. It's this. I think the Chinese have this right with the yin and the yang. It's like prepare and forget kind of thing. Yes, get ready. Yes, know the lines, because if you don't know the lines, then you blow the scene. You're in your head. You're thinking about not knowing the lines, or you're fucking up.
someone's cue or the entire shot. So,
Or you get fired.
so you got to know the lines to the point where you can forget, and that's a journey, because that's the journey, because you can learn the lines, and then you can learn them to a point where you can recite them, but that doesn't mean you know them to the point where you're just not even thinking about saying. And that's the real place you want to get to, where you're talking for the character and not for the actor.
That's the high for us.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Like
when
what
you
they
cross
do.
over.
Was that good? Because I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was obviously Michael J. Fox was one of the stars of the film as well, and was he aware of? I don't want to say the cult status of both of you at that point, because that makes it. That sounds chintzy. I don't want to say it like that, but was he somebody who was actively on set, very supportive and excited to work and things like that on the film?
My interaction with Michael was always lovely. I really don't have much with Michael at all. And Michael, that's when he was starting to become very sick, and he didn't know what he had.
He found out actually during the shooting of this. He would fly. I remember a couple of times. He would leave. He would finish shooting on a Thursday and go to the airport and fly from Wellington to Auckland to LA to New York, and he would stay. So that means he'd get there on a Saturday. He would stay on a Sunday and then fly back on Monday and be ready to shoot Tuesday. And I was going, Michael, wow, man, why are you doing that? And he said, I had to meet the committee for an apartment we're buying. But later, come to find out he was actually meeting specialists. And we didn't know that, but he's phenomenal. Kept it to himself, as he should. I got along great with him. I would say that, what you see is who he is. He's very much like...
Very genuine.
Very genuine. I would also say that he was probably a little private, which is really understandable, because when you're a star, everybody wants to be your friend, and it can be really exhausting. So I really regretted that, one time he invited me to his house down there to kind of watch a movie and have dinner, and I couldn't because I was...
Never invited me.
It was just.
Whatever.
But I couldn't go because I would.
Fine.
I had a flight. I had a flight. I wish I had. I wish I could have. But he was a great guy.
Could have called me. I would have gone.
I remember him telling Peter once, don't mess around with me. You don't have to pussyfoot around. Just tell me, faster, funnier. Just tell me.
Yeah, he was very, and the little bit I worked with him, he was very available.
Yeah.
Very giving.
Really.
He comes from TV.
He was organic. He was just really a cool guy. And I think it's some of his best work in that movie. He's really good in it.
Did either of you have any dealings with Zemeckis, or was he not really hands-on in this project?
He wasn't there at all.
I met him. He was there. He was there he was there briefly when I was
He got to hang with everybody.
He's kind of a big deal, too.
I just met him. I know that he had. I know that he had to. You have to go through hoops. You don't just like when I auditioned. You get the call and they say it looks good. You're being considered. And then you wait a week, and then they go. It's closer, but you need to get approval from them. And I remember them saying, you need to get approval from Zemeckis. It's like, oh shit, this is frightening. I talked with him just briefly, but I never got to know him, really. He was just on set, checking in.
Before we open the floor up to the fans, I was wondering if each of you could name possibly your favorite scene in the film, whether you acted in it or not.
It's been so long since I've seen it, jeez.
Sorry, I sprung it on you.
Good grief. Of our own or somebody else's?
It can be anything in the film, or if it's a scene of your own, you're more than welcome to talk about that as well.
Everything he did.
Likewise.
Serious.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of things pop into my head.
Sometime today.
I would say that just cinematically, I thought it was visionary at the end of the movie when Michael J. Fox is kind of running around in the house and it's shifting time. He gets under a bed, he comes out. It's just this cinematic brilliance. I mean, it's just really tour de force filmmaking and logistical on Peter's part.
I like the opening of it too, when he
Yeah.
comes in through the window and then follows me down the stairs. The whole monster figure coming through the wallpaper.
This movie got really misunderstood and mishandled, actually. By
So
Universal.
underrated.
It never should have been a summer movie.
It's supposed to come out at Halloween. It would have been perfect.
But they put it out July 19th. Woo! You know, it's not really a summer, movie. It's not all full of sunshine or anything. So it was kind of bad timing there, and a campaign, an ad campaign that the beginning of the movie starts one place and the thing corkscrews down into a very dark place by the end. And Universal just did not know how to articulate or advertise something,
Or release it.
in a cohesive way that would intrigue people to go see it. And he's like, do you play up that it's a Michael J. Fox ghost movie? Woo! Or do you play up that it goes to a very dark place that would attract horror fans? And I think they split their audience. Date night that went from thinking they were going to see that tone of the first part of the movie were like shocked at the latter half, and the avid horror fans stayed away because they thought it was a live-action Casper movie or something. So, but it's found its audience over time, and really holds up. A lot of people don't know it's a Peter Jackson movie. They come to my table and I've got a Dammers shot there, and I say, Peter Jackson, really? It's like, oh.
People can still look at those pictures and go, oh my God, that was you in that one? Put on a black wig, and ruin your career.
I think it's very funny with the trajectory of Peter Jackson starting out making films like Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles, and then that little chunk where he made Heavenly Creatures and the Frighteners. That's then that catapults him into Lord of the Rings, and a lot of people who watch Lord of the Rings wouldn't go back and watch Meet the Feebles and think, oh, this is definitely the same guy. But I just that little chunk right there between Heavenly Creatures and the Frighteners is such a brilliant time in his career, and the Frighteners at that point, and not sure if a lot of you are aware of this, but at that point it used a lot of digital effects, more than any other film at the time. And Weta Digital was created for that film, and if it were not for Weta Digital, or Weta, I feel silly that I'm not pronouncing it right, Lord of the Rings would not have existed the way it does without that. So Peter Jackson, definitely a visionary.
That is true, and Peter Jackson parlayed a lot of this. This is when Universal came to him and said, we want to push up the release date for Frighteners, so you need to get on a fast track. He said, well, in order to do that, you have to give me more computers and more software and a lot more. And they said, okay. And that's the software that he utilized for eventually Lord of the Rings. Here's something really interesting, speaking of Universal. Peter's penultimate movie from his childhood was King Kong. He adored King Kong, obsessed with King Kong. He had a collection of King Kong memorabilia. And before Frighteners came out, Universal made a deal with Peter Jackson to remake King Kong.
Yeah.
And then when they screwed up the release for Frighteners, and it didn't do as well as it should have, they pulled the deal. Yes, really. And then Peter was sort of
Pissed off.
And then when Lord of the Rings absolutely exploded, Universal comes back to him and says, hi. And he says, yeah, hi. So he eventually got what he wanted, bigger and better than
Yeah,
ever,
when they went in, just the two of them went in to negotiate, and there were like 50-some Universal lawyers, right? And Peter and
Fran or
Jamie.
Jamie.
Jamie. And the guys at Universal were, no, we can't do, you've got to have all your guys here. And Peter said, yep, we're here. You either do it with us, or you don't do it at all. He's like the hero for all of us, right? Rocky!
Also, Universal wanted Frighteners to be shot in the United States. And Peter said, it's not going to happen. And he did go through some hoops to show them. He went and shot some footage to show that he could make New Zealand look like America. But this speaks Peter's loyalty to his creative crew and the people that he worked with.
Been with him forever.
If he went to America, none of them would have jobs, and he would be nitpicked and hovered over, and
He does it his way.
yes, he does.
For sure.
And his way is pretty damn good.
Some questions, huh?
Yeah.
I was getting there. Let's start with you.
Not working at senior, I believe working with John Aston.
Oh, working with John Aston.
I think I got to say hi, John.
Me too. At a get together at Peter's house, some function or something, and talked with John for a while, but we never had any scenes with him. Never saw him in totally different parts of the movie. Never saw him yet. Never even saw him in makeup. Ever. It was just when he was working. I was flown back to L.A. and
We were also pocketed in the movie.
Yeah. We were like almost in different chapters of the movie.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy watching your own work? Do you like finish it?
I finish and move on. Maybe I'll look at it later, but I don't really tend to. Can someone kill them? I don't tend to kind of lay around and watch it. I just don't.
Me either. It takes me about 5 times to watch something, and then I can really see what I do. The first time an actor, most actors watch, you remember how shitty the day was, how your feet hurt, the asshole on the set. Everything comes flooding back to you, and you can't really just watch what you do.
Yeah, no, it's a whole experience for us. When people say to me, oh, this movie, the first thing in my head is, okay, so I was in Bulgaria, and the food was fucking awful.
It's so weird like that. First time I saw E.T., I ran out of the screening room. I thought my career's over. I'm so bad.
Oh, but you're not.
You know, it's an active thing.
We're like that, though.
At its soul, the Frighteners is just a ghost story, so I was just curious if either of you have ever felt like you might have seen a ghost in real life.
That's a good question.
Well, I have, definitely. Did anybody see my celebrity ghost stories thing? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
After my dad committed suicide, definitely had a meeting with him, absolutely, in my room as a light. Absolutely, after Chris died, and years later I was getting remarried, and I just said out loud, I said, okay, honey, if you got anything to say it now. If I'm not supposed to do this, say it now. Every single clock in my house stopped. And the television went on. And I said, well, shit, is that a yes or a no? You know? So I mean, most of you know, I think, that I am an international healer and a clairaudient. If you don't, you should check out my website. It's pretty awesome work. So it's just kind of everyday stuff to me. And the scene, it was so surreal because the scene I had to shoot the day I got back after burying Chris was the scene where I had to shoot Michael J. Fox. And I was so, you know, back and forth across the world 4 times in 2 weeks. Your body and your soul don't know where each other is. Right?
You're over the Pacific somewhere.
And all the emotion and everything. And I remember being on the set and shooting Michael and seeing Chris before. That's how surreal it all was for me at that point. So I've had a lot of experiences, and with a lot of clients that I work with, oftentimes people from the other side come through and give them messages. Sometimes they feel like John Edward. They're showing me roses.
Mine's, I had a pretty benign experience when I was in college. I moved into this Victorian house that had been broken up into apartments, and I got this cool upstairs apartment, roof like that, really cool. I had my own back entrance, and it was just like that style. And I moved into this place,